All right, guys, I'm back with another video. I know I've been pretty sporadic with the videos here lately. I don't know if I'll get back to my 2 times a week, but I am going to try to get back to once a week. So you guys have been asking me about the Impinda and the Umnandi. So I'm not going to talk too much about the Umnandi today. This video is going to focus on the Impinda, as the title says. So I have got all of the knives here from, or some of the knives here from the CRK lineup that fall into this size range. I don't have the small and Kosi, and I believe that's the only other knife that would be in this size range because they never made a small 25. So I do have a majority of the knives that will fall into this size range. This is a pure gentleman's knife, so I'm kind of just leaving this here, and I'll show you some side-by-side comparisons for size purposes. But these two are much more comparable, one being a slip joint, one being a locking knife. But let me talk about what I'm carrying today. I am carrying my SAL Strider fixed blade in S30V. This knife here is one of my favorites. I did use this knife. If you go back to my Strider playlist, I literally cut an iPhone 6 Plus in half with this knife. Minimal damage, great knife. I like it a lot, holds a great edge. I did have it Rockwell tested. I can't remember what it Rockwelled out at. I'm not even gonna quote a number because I can't remember. I'd have to look back. Anyway, let's get back to this. So we have the Impinda here, which is a titanium slip joint knife with S35 blade steel. It has a California clip style blade. It has S35 VN back spring and S35 VN back spring here. It has an upgraded captured pivot. The first ones did not have a captured pivot. So what would happen is you would go to adjust the pivot or loosen the pivot on this side, and this other side here, which you can see is smooth, you can't get any traction on, would just spin and spin and spin. And apparently they do put a little bit of Loctite in here, so then that caused all kinds of issues. There are only 2 other fastening points on the knife, which are these 2 here to hold in that back spring. There is a pocket clip, which you can remove, and there's a filler tab to put in this hole. Also, this pocket clip has been updated, and the update is, if I can get it to focus, is the fact that there's only one tooth, for lack of a better term, here on the side of the pocket clip. So there's one tooth here. Before they had one on either side. So that helps the knife to slide in and out of the pocket a little bit easier. This is the small 21. So let's look at these two side by side. So this knife here, open, is a little over 7 inches long, and this knife here, open, is a little under 7 inches long. And if you guys want those specific specs, you can go look at those. I'm not going to talk about things that you guys can find readily available. So if you look here, the blade lengths are slightly different. This one is, the small 21 is a little bit shorter than the Impinda, so that size difference does translate all the way out to the blade. This is the locking knife, as I said. You can see here the Reeve integral lock, or frame lock as we commonly call it. This has a pivot bushing. This here does not have a pivot bushing. It's just a pivot with washers, and it's tightened down, and there is a back spring and a pocket clip. So pretty straightforward knife. Here, this knife, I don't remember the exact weight, but it is super light. I'd guess around 2 ounces. And you can see the size difference here between the 2 knives. So if you were wondering about that. This knife, speaking of size differences, we'll talk about ergonomics. So I have an extra large hand. So my hand is 4 inches from this side of my palm to this side of my palm. I have 0 issues getting a full 4-finger grip on this knife, just like that. It's very comfortable. The pocket clip tucks away right here in the fold of my hand. It's not in the way. It's not a hot spot. I don't feel it at all. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be pinching the sides of the knife like this. There's no hot spot right here. It's a very nice knife to use in hand. Even if you're holding it like this and you want to get a little bit more power, there's 0 issue with this here. You can't really choke up on the knife. Not if you're going to do any significant cutting. I mean, you can choke up on the knife. You can rest your finger here on the knife if you would like to, absolutely, and get up close. There is a sharpening choil back here that is very good. As you can see, I know a lot of people talk about the plunge line and the end of the blade right there. You can see that plunge line goes well beyond the end of the blade here, so you're not going to have any trouble getting the entire length of the blade sharpened. With that being said, this is a high hollow grind. This is a slip joint knife, so a lot of people would be thinking, well, it must be a slicer. I've not had any issues with this knife. I've broken down boxes. I've opened up mail. I've opened reams of paper. I've cut rope. There was some rope up in a tree from a rope swing, and I happened to be walking around with my boss. My boss said, I don't want the rope up in the tree. I cut the rope down for her. She was, more than pleased. I was pleased at how the knife performed, but it is about 22 thousandths behind the edge at the heel, 25 thousandths behind the edge at the middle of the blade, and about 30 thousandths behind the edge at the tip of the blade. So there is a substantial amount of blade thickness at the tip for this style of knife. So I wouldn't hesitate to do a little bit of light prying or something like that, keeping in mind this is a non-locking knife. So when I say light, you're going to light relative to the fact this is a non-locking knife. There's also a swedge at the top. So this California clip style blade, which is already pretty long and slender, it has excellent piercing capabilities. So if you really want to get in and do some fine detailed work, it's easy to get in and trace out like a label or something. You want to cut out a specific part of a label on a box you're going to put in a video or take a picture of, or you need to keep that portion of the label. You can really get in there, trim it out like a scalpel, peel it off. No issues. It's really a great knife overall. One thing I did forget to mention is this knife here is 3 ounces roughly. This knife here is 3.5 ounces roughly. So it is a little bit heavier. So even though it is a non-locking knife, it doesn't feel fragile and frail, kind of like sometimes you may feel with a slip joint knife, like you need to kind of use it a little bit easier or whatever. And I think that weight comes in from this backspacer here. As I stated, it's S35VN. Here, there is no backspacer. There is just the standoff here at the end. There's the stop pin here in the handle, and that's pretty much it. So I do think that extra ½ ounce comes from that backspace, from the back spring. I could be wrong, but that is my guess. Let's move on to price. That is probably where I'm going to lose most of you guys. This is a $450 knife, which in the catalog of Chris Reeve knives, that's not awful. I believe it is a little bit higher than a plain small 21. I believe a plain small 21 is like $375, if I'm not mistaken. So you are talking about more money, but I don't know that it's not worth it. $450 will get you into the door with a custom slip joint. There are some makers that make slip joints for less than that $450 mark, but the general market is $450, $500, $600, right in that ballpark. So you could go the custom route. My argument there would be, and you've seen it with this knife if you looked at my other video, when I first got the knife, it had a burr on the back spring and it made an awful screeching noise when I opened it, and it got to the point where I couldn't open it or close it. Chris Reeves had this knife fixed and ready to send back to me within a week and a half. They sent me a free label, they sent it back to me for free, and they rushed the repair on the knife. When you go with a custom maker, not that they don't want to take care of their knives, but you're talking about usually one person working on knives that are handmade. So they not only have to continue to make knives to pay their bills, but then they have to turn around and fix your knife in between those other knives and then get that knife sent back to you. So the hidden value, as I call it there, is the service that can be provided by Chris Reeves for this knife versus what an individual can provide for their knife. Not saying an individual is not going to take care of the knife. Not saying there aren't individuals out there that won't break their backs to make sure it gets turned around to you quickly. and better than what you sent it to them. And meaning sometimes people will even, once they have the knife in, they'll upgrade finishes, they'll upgrade handle options, etc., etc., etc. What I'm saying is, just generally speaking, getting the knife in, handling the shipping costs, and getting it turned around quickly. I think that 9 times out of 10, you're going to find that a company like Chris Reeve Knives is gonna win that battle. So that is that. Haven't had any issues with the knife. The knife, like I said, I've used it for about a month and a half. Various paper products, rope, etc. The edge, I have not sharpened or stropped it. It's still sharp enough to cut anything I would need to cut. Not gonna say it wouldn't need a stropping or anything like that, but it's not dull by any means. As a matter of fact, let's see here if I have, let's see, here we go. This is just regular 20-pound printer paper. It's not the sharpest knife, and I'm kind of trying to hold this down because this is shipping label. It's not the sharpest knife out the drawer, but like I said, it will get the job done. A quick touch up on the strop, and I'm sure it would be back to slicing that cleanly, no problem. You can see here, I have not cleaned the blade off, so who knows what's on there. You can see there's something on the edge now, so who knows. But with all that said, I do like the knife. I have no intentions of getting rid of the knife. I know you guys were wondering about my thoughts on this particular knife and everything. So those are my thoughts. That's my experience. If you're in the market for one, I've noticed that the prices do seem to be coming down, even though they're not making more of them, not making a lot more of them, I guess I should say. This knife, even though it's regular production, if you guys keep up with the Chris Reeve market, this knife is not produced like their 21s or their Nkosi's or the M90. Well, maybe like the M90s, but it's not a knife that every single time they run knives, you see more of these come out. So it's good to see more of them coming out. It's good to see more guys carrying them. I think it's a really good option, especially if you're looking for something that's not just your regular run-of-the-mill locking knife. It's a pretty decent knife. I appreciate you guys watching. Hope to catch you in the next video. Remember, a lazy man carries a dull knife.